In here, we're headed for Daniel chapter 3. And while people are headed out and you're headed for Daniel 3 or getting the notes or whatever, let's do this one. This is based on recent statistics. What states are most favorable when it comes to the cost of living? What do you think? What states would say are the best states for living with expenses? Where? Florida? Okay, these are going to be. Oh, I said that backwards. Okay, these are the most expensive. Okay, I have. Okay. California, Hawaii, New York, Hawaii, Jersey is now. Are you going to go with Florida now? The most expensive. Okay. By the way, the next slide, you know what it's going to be. I already said it's the least. Any other states? You said several of them. Okay. Number 10, most expensive, would be Maryland, then Connecticut, Oregon, New York, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Washington, Hawaii. Number 1? Yeah, California's number 1. Okay, let's flip it over. The least expensive. You think the Dakotas? They had all that explosion of stuff. Here, okay, let's take from this would be, we're going from, the 40th up to the 50th, least expensive. Nebraska, Kentucky, several of you said this. North Dakota is in there, it surprised me. South Dakota as well, Alabama, Mississippi, least expensive. No, not Pennsylvania. Arkansas, okay, let's do this one. Where's Pennsylvania? It's one of those numbers in the 50th. 27. We're right in the middle of the whole pack. There we go. Okay, let's go back into history. Okay, ancient cities or kingdom empires that what we know were very, very wealthy. Okay. Babylon is agreed across the board is probably historically the richest city in all of history, which is really interesting since we're in the book of Daniel, which that's why this question is here. Okay, what other cities? Rome is going to be there. Carthage is going to be there. Okay, Athens is going to be there. So you have Rome, Athens, Nineveh, Carthage, and number 1, everybody agrees Babylon was probably the richest in all of history, which plays into the book of Daniel. We're in chapter 3. If you've just been joining with us, okay, let's just set up the scene. We've already did chapter 1. Chapter 1 is all about the young men who are taken from Jerusalem. The city's been ransacked by the Babylonians, and so Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego with Daniel are part of the captives in the first invasion. There was 3 invasions. And so what happens is they're taken in this first one right around 605, and chapter 1 is about they get there, they're in this training program to become Chaldean advisors. They refuse to eat the food and God blesses them. Chapter 2 is when Nebuchadnezzar gets the dream of future events. He says, interpret my dream and tell me it, and then interpret it. Nobody can do it, but Daniel does, and we saw what happened there. Now chapter 3 is another phenomenal account. It's the fiery furnace, and we start with chapter 3, and we want to get the setting for it, and you may not have details, but maybe you do in your footnotes. It says Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold, and then it goes right into it. It doesn't tell us when. And so here's some information that may be helpful to understanding the chapter. It may not be. Nobody's really certain how long this has been. Some will say that, okay, this is only a couple years after the last chapter. It's Daniel, Meshach, and Abednego, Shadrach, that they've just finished their schooling. It's only been a couple years, and so they give that information. Others base this upon a footnote in the Septuagint, the Greek copy of the Old Testament, where it indicates out of Jeremiah that some footnote somewhere in the Septuagint says that this was in association with the fall of Jerusalem. And that's kind of why Nebuchadnezzar built this thing, is in reaction against Jehovah God. And so then that's going to put us right around the year 586. So we're talking now that this is that time period, if that's the case, which seems to be indicative, that what happened is Daniel and his friend have already been in authority for a while. And so Nebuchadnezzar, when he went into Jerusalem, they weren't the only country that they conquered. There were several other city-states in the Middle East area that rose up with the Jews, and he goes in and kind of wipes them all out. In Jerusalem, you remember that he just totally devastated. And so when he comes back, he's celebrating his victory, some say, and this would explain how Nebuchadnezzar talks to the young men in this passage when he's saying to them and he calls them by name and things like that. So it could be that this is the right time. Again, we don't know for sure. Anyhow, Nebuchadnezzar builds this statue. What do you know about the statue? Looking at verses 1 and 2, what do you know? It's what? It's pretty big. Okay, he's giving you details, and they're using Old Testament type of descriptions. How big is it? Okay, it's 90 feet tall. Okay, that's your 3 square of the cubits. Okay, and then he gives other information. What's it look like? Okay, it's covered in gold, or it says it's made of gold. Most everybody concludes it's probably been covered with gold because of the weight factor. So it's a huge, huge statue. We don't know this. We don't know if this is of Nebuchadnezzar himself, which wouldn't have been strange. There are records in the ancient Near East that other rulers did make statues of themselves, or they made obelisks as well, or they made statues of their gods. And what they would frequently do is they would put either on the statue or on the base of it, they would recount their victories. And that's where we get a lot of history, is things archaeologists uncover, and they find a lot of these ruins that give information about who fought who and things like that. Why would he, and here's a big question that people would say, if he is exalting his God or himself, and by the way, if you look through the chapter real quickly, he's going to say you have to worship. And they accuse the 3 men when they say they didn't fall down. If you jump down into the chapter, let's go down to verse 3. Chapter 3, verse 10. Thou, O king, you made a decree that every man shall, when they hear the music, they shall fall down and do what else? Okay, so worship is involved here. And so the question that comes up, many people will look and say, this doesn't make sense. Because at the end of hearing the future events, how did Nebuchadnezzar respond? At the end of chapter 2, we read in verse 46, Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel and commanded that they should offer oblation. And he said this in verse 47, Of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods and the Lord of lords and a revealer of secrets, etc., etc. And so people look and say, oh, that was Nebuchadnezzar exalting Jehovah God. Why would he now make a statue of some false deity and demand that people worship it? Okay, that's a real good possibility. Did you hear what he said? That it was more lip service or just at the moment. Remember, if there is a gap of some 15 years, could that have had bearing in his forgetting God? Okay, your English probably does it well. Several, as I was reading it, I changed a couple words. As I was reading it, and I put the, when I said the Lord of Lords. What do you read in your text? What does it have? Yeah, so it's really not definitive. He is recognizing that Jehovah, through the dreams, was probably one of the most exalted of gods, but it didn't get rid of his pantheon of gods. Okay, and so don't make chapter 2, don't look at it as his conversion moment and give him more credit. He may have, but chances are it's probably not, that's not the case. And so you have this situation. Now the statue is huge. You already gave the dimensions of it. And how it was designed, this is how some project that it looked. There are others that say, well, hey, they made the Colossus of Rhodes. We know that was 70 feet. How that looked, we don't know. But we know these things were huge in that regard. Made of gold, probably, as I mentioned, because of the weight we're talking about, overlaid with gold. But can you imagine if you're coming through the plains and you see this statue that's 90 feet tall, which back in those days, that's pretty tall stuff. Okay? We're talking to the height of this auditorium to the peak of the roof. Okay? And you've got this gold statue. How would the sun reflect? Yay, nay? Would it catch the gleam? Okay, so it's very impressive. It's set up, it says in Dura, just for your information, Dura simply means walled city. There's at least 6 of them that we read about in Babylonian Empire. And so that they had these walled cities, they could be fortresses. There is one that is closest to where the site of ancient Babylon was, just 6 miles south of it. And when they were doing some digging there, they did find a huge platform. I'm giving you the dimensions here, that this huge platform was there. They don't know what was on it. Do you want to guess what the possibility is? Okay. So anyway, you have that background information. Now, when you look at the text, who does he gather in particular? It gives, Daniel records very specifically, who does he gather? His government leaders. It's not the entire nation. It's the government leaders. And he says this 2 times throughout the chapter where he mentions who, and he lists everybody. In verse 2, he's got the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers. Why would he target them to come and say to those individuals at all levels, high level, low level, mediocre type of bureaucrat? Why did he, well, let's do the first question. What did he demand of them? Okay, when they hear the music, they're to bow down, okay? Anything else? Okay, and to do the worship. Because verse 6, he says, who doesn't fall down and doesn't worship. And so it's very clear. He's got people from all different districts. Some of them speak different languages, and they're supposed to fall down and worship. Okay, my question to you is, why does he target the government officials to come at this big celebration, dedication of this statue that could be of him or of his God? Why is he targeting them? Okay, that's a real good possibility. Okay? Any other reason? Okay, because if they do it, then then that's going to carry all the way through. So you go through and go, okay, testing their loyalty, an example to the rest. And again, this homage aspect is much bigger than just, okay, let's just bow down to a statue. Worship is involved. What is he combining that we don't want in America? Church and state. Okay? For them, combining church and state, is that such an issue? It's not a problem. But what does it increase? The control of the person in charge. Okay? If they can do the everyday worship. And again, we don't know if this is self-exaltation or worship of his God or a combination of the two. But what he's doing is he's reuniting politics with religion. And if you look through history, where you get politics and religion in control together, there is pure domination and tyranny. And so what he has here is he has this combination. And the reason, by the way, that is who engages in religion? When you think of people classes, who engages in it? Okay, everybody. Okay, at all levels, especially the common folk. And so this is a control factor from the top on down. And so what he's doing, he makes this order that's real clear. When the music starts, which he's using very effectively, you all bow down. And if you don't bow down, what's the penalty? This is kind of a no-brainer choice. You got to bow or... Okay. And so what does he build nearby? A fiery furnace. By the way, at that one site of Dura, there is another item, building that was found that was similar to about the size of the screen, and it had an opening at the top and on the side. So many conclude that that's probably the fiery furnace, this dome-shaped type of thing that was excavated. And so failure to comply was a threat. It wasn't just, okay, we're going to strangle you, we're going to cut off your head. This is a very painful form of death, that you're going to have this. By the way, just pause. Any similarities to Revelation 13? Who builds a statue? Antichrist. And what does he demand people to do? Okay, so they've got to worship this thing, and if they don't worship, what happens to them? Okay, they can't eat, there's going to be death. And so that's why at times you get the parallel in the book of Revelation that things to talk about Mystery Babylon. There's a lot of parallels to this corruption from this ancient empire. Anyway, okay, everybody feels obligated. The music starts, trumpets blare, whatever. Everybody bows down except, and that's the part of the story that Daniel is focusing on. Who doesn't bow budge? Shadrach? Okay. Who's missing? Let's come back to that in a minute. Okay. So why is it Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego don't bow? Okay. Yeah, okay. Somebody mentioned, they said they're Jews. Okay. Is there more to it than just their nationality? They weren't just Jews, they were faithful Jews. Okay. So they don't bow, and we all understand why. It would be a violation of their Jewish beliefs that they weren't supposed to do this, and so they're going to refuse to do it, just like they refused to eat the non-kosher food in chapter 1. They're going to follow. What's really interesting is from their perspective, they're saying these rules of God, these laws for our people, they still apply to us even when we're in a distant land. Despite what we've done in the past, we still have to obey. Despite the orders from our superior that we're supposed to respect, we're going to do this. Even at the point of threat of death, we're going to follow our convictions, which you and I find very commendable. I'm assuming that you look and say, this is extremely commendable. 3 young men, okay, could be in their 30s, which makes them very young in my mind, okay, that they're at that spot and they're going to put principle above everything. Okay, and so they don't bow. Here's just, how did they get found out that they didn't bow? Okay, people are going to accuse them by the fact, and I'm drawing something from this that maybe I'm drawing too much, but they get squealed on by the Chaldeans, if you look at the story. It wasn't that they made such a public spectacle. I can't talk this morning. Okay. They made themselves to be such a public spectacle that they drew attention to themselves. They weren't out there protesting the statue. Does that make sense? We're going to do what's right. And we don't have to make this an issue that we're being persecuted. We do what's right. And so their accusers are the Chaldeans. So far in the book, who is being referred to when we talk of the Chaldeans? Who is he referring to? More than just the Babylonians. What particular group? The leaders, the wise men that we would call them, okay? That whole element of a political group. And where it says in the text that they come, and I thought you would find this interesting in verse 8, and they accuse the Jews, the word is they chewed them up. Doesn't that sound like, somebody really today? In the Hebrew, they chewed them up. They chewed them into pieces. In other words, they are absolutely verbally attacking. And so they come, and these guys, and why would this particular group that, if we understand right, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are part of the Chaldean group, why would their co-workers become cannibalistic and turn on them? Do they do this elsewhere in the book? Who do they turn on later on? They're after Daniel. So these guys, their jealousy, whatever you want to call it, they're turning on these, and they identify. You know what this reminds me of? Is when we would have the kids say, bow your heads, close your eyes, and let's eat. When all of a sudden one of the others would say, when we're done, they say, Tony didn't close his eyes. Okay. And and as a parent, you're thinking, so these guys, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. They're doing it out of a jealousy. And you look at verse 12. This is an interesting point in how it unfolds. They accuse him of three things. What are the three things that they highlight? And they say, King, this is what these three dudes did not do. Okay? Oh, did I give you the wrong? Yeah, in verse 12. Okay? So let's break it down. They have not regarded you. Put that into different words. Okay, they ignored you? Disrespected you? What else did they accuse them of? Didn't serve your gods. What else did they bring up? Didn't worship the image. Okay. So looking at the text, okay, and knowing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, are these all true? When the king talks to them, the king doesn't even ask them about one of these. It's as if he just, yeah, right. But he asks them about two of these. Which one do you think is exaggerated, embellished? Okay, because so far in the book have they been respectful? Okay. So that one, is inconsistent. But again, when you're being accused, typically don't people embellish some of the accusations? Okay, so they get this, and as you read the story, they're squealed on, and the king goes, oh, well, to each his own. What do you got in verse 13? Okay, then the king in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they brought these guys. So if the king, let's just pretend, see this in our minds, okay? So this king is really mad. What made him mad? Okay, they're defying his words that he made very clear. So we can leave it just simply at that. He, in that sense that if he is trying to do a unification program, they've just undermined it, and they're supposed to be working for him, whatever the reasons. And so, what in this circumstance, okay, the one person that is missing so far is Daniel. Why? What's that?
He's off in another province.
Is that a possibility? Or do you know that for sure?
No, that's speculation.
Yeah. It's a good speculation.
Yeah, because the end of the chapter, it insinuated.
Yeah. It points out at the end of chapter 2 that he's put into authority. By the way, is this such a stretch that if all of a sudden the president, the Congress, everybody gets together, didn't they make a TV drama about this? That when they have all the leaders together, they usually have somebody in authority designated off to the side in case. Didn't they do a TV series a number of years ago? What's that? Okay. And so could it be that the king has all of his government officials, they're gathered away from the capital? Either Daniel could be on a diplomatic trip, or Daniel's back at the ranch keeping everything secured. Yes, no? Is that a stretch? No, probably not. What we don't agree with is those who say, well, Daniel's not mentioned because this is the time that Daniel, he agreed with the king, and he bowed, and he learned from it, and then he changed his mind. And you and I go, why would you even suggest that about him? It makes more sense that he's out of the region, he's keeping things, because you and I would say this, there's no doubt he would have refused. Yes, no? Okay. And I think I kind of lean, again, we don't know. Bob, with what you said that he's out of the region, I wonder if he's not farther away and he didn't try, because there's, I would think if Daniel was nearby, he would have tried to influence the king to scale down some of this rule that he made. I think this is providentially arranged, that Daniel's not there. I think it fits really well the story, and it elevates who? It challenges who? Which guys in the past, they've been kind of secondary to Daniel. And now what does this story bring those three men to do? They got to stand on their own feet, okay? And it points that they weren't just totally subordinate to Daniel. They were strong enough to stand on their own feet. Now you're reading this, you're hearing this, and you're one of the captives. Okay, we already read that they've elevated Daniel to the point that they're saying Daniel's on par, Ezekiel did, he's on par with people like Job and Noah, was it? Okay, those two. And sometimes what do we think about these saints, these prophets? What do we think about them? And we hear their stories and we go, well, they're heroes. They don't have the same situations. What does this story tell you? Okay, they do, but what does it tell you? Daniel's out of the picture. Daniel's the prophet. He's the exalted one of the, if you can put it from a human point of view. What does this relay? Can others also stand for the faith? If you're part of bureaucracy, can you stand for the faith? Does God only bless the Daniels? Okay. So I think there's real benefit here that is expanding to the Jewish people that, hey, any of us in the more of a common, now I know these guys are in government, but they're more common than Daniel in the government. I think what it does is it just generates to say faithfulness is going to be blessed at all levels, not just the prophet. People in whatever positions, they can be faithful. And so providentially, I think that this is a tremendous story in the story of Daniel. And so what happens here is the king questions the three men. You read the king's questions, and in his rage and fury, he commands. By the way, can you imagine and picture the scene? How do you think the three guys were brought to the king? Okay, you're the king. You order somebody to go and get them, and get them here now. How do you think those soldiers reacted? Do you think that there's a possibility they were brought roughly by the soldiers? Okay, so they come in and they're there, and the king is in a terrible mood. Okay, he's in an awful mood. And so when he comes, he does something that kind of some point out in the story. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now he knows them by name. I know that their names were brought up earlier, but he's calling them by name, which indicates to many that there was more commonality here, a relationship. Do you not serve my gods nor worship? He doesn't accuse them. He doesn't ask them about, haven't you respected me? Which implies what? He knows he has their respect. He knows the three guys. He's calling them by names. Okay? My question is this: why is he interviewing them? Okay, that's where it's going to go. But why is he interviewing them? Okay, it could be because of what we just said. He knows these guys. He knows them personally. He's trusted them in the past. It could be that Nebuchadnezzar has absolutely no gift of delegation. It could be that Babylonian law, which we do not know that Babylon had, but we do know that in the Medo-Persian Empire it was this way. An official had to be tried by his superior. He couldn't be tried by other officials. He'd have to be tried by the king. Maybe this is Babylonian rule. But the king he is asking them, and so it could be he values these three guys. It could be he knows these three guys. Part of that, I'm inclined to think, is because of verse 19. When it says the king was full of fury. Okay? Well, he already was ticked. But in verse 19 it says he was even more filled with fury, and something else happened. What does your Bible read? His facial expression or his visage changed towards them. What does that imply? Even though he was ticked with them when they first came in, there seems to be that he is, why did you guys not do this? There seems to be some I'm going to say camaraderie. That's a bad word. Okay. Yeah, it could be, somebody said it, he trusted them in the past. Michelle, I think, mentioned it. It could be that, guys, did you really do this? But then when they answer, now his facial response to them is even more highlighted here. So I kind of think that he's doing this personally with them because there's some type of rapport between them. And so what happens here is these guys, their response is misconstrued by many people. How does your Bible say that they responded? Okay, how do people take that phrase? Okay? The critics of these guys, what would they say that these guys are doing? They're being totally disrespectful. They're just, we aren't even going to be careful how we answer you. And people look at this phrase and some interpret it as what's happening here is these guys are just being mouthy, being disrespectful to the king. How do you understand that phrase? What's that? Oh, we're going to be careful. We're hesitant to say this. But here's what we're going to say. That's a good possibility. Well, they do that. Okay. There's two that those who would look and say, these guys aren't being cocky or disrespectful or arrogant. There's two possibilities that are presented. One is we want to be careful, but we don't have to take time to think this one through. We already know our answer. We know where we're going to go with this. Okay, and so their response is that idea is, we didn't bow down. And the king, look at the king, what he's offering them, which I think this supports the idea. There have been some relationship where he says, do you not serve my gods? Now, if you be ready, that at what time you hear the sound, we're going to give you a second chance. I'm going to have everybody tune up one more time. We're going to get the orchestra, and when they do it, and you fall down and worship with the image I made, all's well. But if you worship not, you're going to be cast in the very same hour in the midst of that fiery furnace. And here is the statement that is challenging. Who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Okay? Is this a slap against Jehovah? That he could make you look fatter than the others, but you're not getting out of this one. Okay? He can't rescue you out of this one. And so at this point, and again, that's why I'm thinking he's pretty cocky. This is not a conversion back in chapter 2. He's even going to that point. And the three men, we responded. He got an upset king. How did these three appear? Okay. They're very deliberative, and they say, we're not careful to answer you, not disrespectful. We don't need to think about it. It is well known. We will not try to explain away. We're not going to bow. We're not going to bow. Now, that's not the end of it. Their real faith comes in their next statements. Okay. Where they answered and said, "O king, we are not careful." And again, I think they're respectful by title and everything else. Okay, if it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us out of the burning fiery furnace. They have total faith that he could not only deliver them out of the furnace, but notice the next phrase. He will deliver us out of, what did the king just say? Who's able to deliver you out of my hand? And they respond, our God can deliver you out, you know what I'm saying. Okay. But verse 18, This is where real faith resides. If not, okay, even if we're, briquettes by the end of the day, okay, be it known unto you, O king, we will not serve your gods, nor worship the golden image which you set up. We are going to remain faithful no matter what. No matter what. That's the real evidence of faith in these guys. Okay? It just builds. It's just, whoa, now all of a sudden you got the exclamation point. And so they're responding. We already mentioned that. Michelle, you brought it up, that they're speaking very openly about their faith in their God. That here, even in Babylon, and even in the midst of this, in the midst of a pagan worship service, our God is more powerful, which is an amazing thought. Okay, deliver us. And if he chooses not, we're not gonna do it. Okay, so what does the king respond? That we already looked at it. The king now, he was ticked before. What does he do now? Okay, now it's just uncontrolled rage. Okay, and now his visage, his face, he is really angry. And again, several of you indicated, does he feel personally assaulted or betrayed? Therefore, now he goes nutso. Okay, he commanded that they do what? Turn up the furnace. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to turn it up 7 times hotter than normal. And as a result, he's increasing the flames, okay, which makes no sense. If you want them to suffer, turn the flames down, okay? But anyway, if I'm going to burn you, I'm going to burn you good, is his attitude. He's totally out of control, and at this point. And usually people, when their rage gets the best of them, is their good outcomes. No, it usually gets worse. Does the king lose in this one? We know the ending of the story. Well, what else does he lose? He loses his own men, his own bodyguard that are involved with this. He sacrifices them because of his anger. So I hadn't thought about this before. The passage deliberately says, and it gives details. It says, these men were now bound in their coats, their hosen, their hats, their other. Who cares what they were wearing? Right? The writer does. The writer is making a point of giving you their wardrobe. Why? Why does he want you to understand these guys were in full attire? Yes, all of those answers. Okay? But does it strike you? Do you follow what I'm saying? He's giving you added information. Usually when they give us this added tidbits, that seems like, so what? There's a what there. Okay, there's a purpose for it. And so you and I can go, okay, what's the purposes? One, it indicates things are going in haste. While the furnace is getting hot, we're going to make sure these guys are all garbed up. 2, it could be, if you're going to burn, I'm going to make you really burn. I'm adding fuel to the fire with the clothing. It could be they're in their official garments. And we're decking them in all the official garments to show everybody no one's above the law. Okay? It could be the more clothing, the more confined they are, but then he adds they're bound with ropes. Why? Why is the king What's the king wanting everybody to know? There is no escape. There's no way these guys are escaping this thing, and that my wrath, it's no matter who it is, it's going to happen. There's no escaping me. And so the king, we already mentioned, he has his own forces throw him in, and his elite. So, and here the speculation is, and based somewhat on that archaeological find, the idea is it's an elevated area. They drop them in from the top, but which way does heat normally go? Okay, so if the soldiers are coming up here to drop them in the top, where's the hottest part? Okay, so and so they drop them in, and the whole story is just phenomenal. The soldiers who aren't in the furnace are burned up. The three men who are all bound with everything, they go in and they come out. Yeah, and so the writer wants you to understand this isn't trickery. This isn't accidental. This is really a miracle of God because the soldiers' own men, they died. Okay? And so so the three men, they fall down into the furnace, as we already mentioned. Nebuchadnezzar looks inside and he sees, and he identifies here, as they're watching this, and it could be that they're sitting over in the balcony area watching the flames like up there in our baptismal area, and they from that distance where it's safe, he's making that comment. He's the king who is astonished, rose up and spake and said, did we not cast three? It would catch his attention, wouldn't it? Okay, if he's seeing through that, did we not cast three men into the fire? And they said, yeah. And he says, I see four men. Okay, and what's more amazing? They're loose, they're walking in the midst, they have no hurt, and the fourth one is like the Son of Man. Isn't this an amazing little tidbit? What happened to the ropes? But they were the only thing targeted. Isn't that cool? You know what it reminds me of? Do you remember when we were in the book of Acts? Some of you can't, it's a nightmare in your mind. When the earthquake took place in the prison, what was damaged by the earthquake? The chains and the doors. God targeted specific things. Usually, if the chains were going to be, if it's so bad that your chains fall off, the whole building is on top of you. But in this hand of God thing, he targets specific things like, it's not your clothes are burning, just the ropes burnt. Just them. I just think our God is so amazing. And I think he has a real sense of humor, in that regard. Anyway, so it's targeted. He delivered them not from the trial. This is a critical point. They're not saved from the trial, but through the trial, right? Okay, which is critical for you and me. And so in this, and I pointed out up to the top here, they see another form, and I don't know how your English does it. Do you have a "the" before the Son of God? Yes? Do you have that in verse 25? Okay. In the original, it's not as definitive. Okay. Yeah, it's more like a son of the gods in a plural sense. So is he seeing two possibilities? Okay. Who do you immediately, when you read that, who does your mind go to is with them in the fiery furnace? Jesus Christ. Okay. Could it have been what we would call a Christophany, an appearance of Jesus in the Old Testament? Is that a possibility? It could be. What else? An angel. Okay. Which one do we know? We don't. But either way, what does it show you? God's personal presence in some way, shape, or form with them. Yes? Okay. So we conclude, and so I asked this question because I just wanted to think about it. If you had been sitting in the balcony and watching this, and you were one of their accusers, you've just chewed them to pieces, and you heard the king say, no God can deliver you out of my hand. And all of a sudden, the king's saying, they're walking around in there. And they don't seem to be in pain and screaming. And I see something divine, something heavenly with them. What would go through your mind at that very moment? Run? Yeah. What's that? Oops. Yeah. Did we pick on the wrong people here? Yeah. And so, you'd have to be amazed, yes? Okay, now, the story, the way it's written, Daniel, whoever, it's the Holy Spirit, let him, whoever is reading this, They cannot say the king drank something and he was seeing something that wasn't real. They make sure that they give us added information in the next few details that this was real, that there are witnesses to this. Do you catch this? Okay. Anyway, he says, I see those people. Nebuchadnezzar came near the mouth of the furnace. He came out of the balcony and comes as close as he can. And he doesn't send somebody else to go and tell him to come out. He's doing it himself. So he is personally, what word do you want to put in there? Moved, impacted, amazed, convicted, like, I made a huge mistake. Okay, put whatever words you want to throw in here. So what he does is he calls them to come forth, which, by the way, what does that tell you about those men in the furnace? They could have stayed there a while, right? Guys, I want you to come out. Okay, you've done enough tanning. Come on out. Okay, so they're mobile, but they haven't left the furnace until the king lets them out. Okay, there is so much humor in this whole story, amazing humor. Anyway, so he tells them to come out, and remember, he has previously ridiculed their God. He said, no God can deliver. And now he's going to say, Shadrach, you servants of who? The most highest of gods come forth, they come hither, and they come forth out of the midst. Now watch what he does in verse 27. The princes, governors, captains, king's counselors, where are they? They're gathered together, and what do they see? Okay, do you follow what I'm getting at? This isn't the experience of witnessing this wasn't limited to just one or two people. Okay, he wants us to understand all of those in authority. They saw this, and what did they see? What did they see about these guys that is so amazing? Let's list it out. Okay, all these witnesses. What do they see? He just walked through the verse. Okay, have they survived? Okay, these guys have survived, and then they add to it. Not only did they live. Okay, yeah, but no harm. How does he keep on going? Okay, there's not a hair that is singed, and their clothes don't even smell like smoke. Okay, it's not there. You know, there's nothing. The smell of fire. There's nothing, and he highlights this. All these guys saw that nothing. Not even an evidence like, oh, you've been near the wood pile that was burning. Yeah, there's nothing there. And so then it goes on. It says, Nebuchadnezzar says, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And now he makes a new decree. Talk about having your pride broken. All of a sudden he makes this new decree, and he says, okay, he sent his angel, his divine messenger, whoever that may be, delivered his servants that trusted him, have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies. They have not served him except their own God. Therefore, I make this decree, okay, that nothing can be said against this God. Who is the one who said something against him? He did. So now all of a sudden this new decree is, we got to speak reverently of Jehovah God. And they can worship their God, and we drop this anti-Semitism in the court. We got to get rid of it. And so this is an amazing story. And then the three are elevated to higher positions, okay? It's a funny story, but it's really awe-striking in a good way. Like, wow, our God. Okay, so we bring it together, and let's wrap this thing up. Okay, what lessons could those in captivity, when they heard this, what could those Jews take away from it? Remember, if this is the case, our great city Babylon, if this is the case, timing-wise, we just got news that Babylon has been totally Jerusalem has been totally destroyed. If you were a faithful Jew, nationalistic Jew, what would you think about your capital city, Jerusalem, being destroyed? Heartbroken? Yeah, devastated. Where's God? What are you going to learn when you all of a sudden, oh, by the way, when they were celebrating the fall of Jerusalem, do you want to know what our God really did? What would you as a Jew take note of? God has not abandoned us. Jerusalem may have fallen, but God hasn't. Right? Okay? So you're looking at this, you're going, okay, our God hasn't fallen, He has not forsaken us. Our God is still able to do miracles. Okay, outside of the promised land, on top of it, as long as we are going to obey Him, He would bless us, even in unusual circumstances. So we must obey His commands no matter where we are, no matter what the cost. Okay, 2025. We aren't Jews. What do we learn from this story? Okay, what can we draw and say, hey, this is the example for us? Let me give you several real quickly. Okay, we need to be courageous in the face of opposition, and we will face opposition. If we're living, all who live godly will suffer persecution and challenges. We must be courageous enough to do what's right no matter what. No matter who is asking us to do wrong, we must be courageous to do what's right. We must be courageous to do what's right no matter where we are. Here, away from here, near home, away from home. We need to be courageous to do what's right no matter where we're at, no matter what others around us are doing, no matter even what fellow Jews might have done if the other young men were there. Didn't make any difference. Remember, he's talking about people that were from representing all different languages. He says, do what's right no matter who's around you. This is interesting. That maybe some of you remember this study that was done right around 2005, I think it was, that they did this study with teens to see how do teens react against peer pressure. They spent buku bucks to figure it out. And you and I know, okay, are they persuaded by peer pressure? Absolutely. Okay, so are adults. Anyway, the study was, you're a teenager. You're put in a group of 10. Which line is longer? Okay, which one would you say? But in every group, they did this out loud. The other 9 in the group were all told to say C. Okay? And they were testing the one person who didn't know they were being tested. Would they go along with the group or would they say, it's B? You know what they found out? They found out that 75% of the teens went with the group. Even though it was obvious to them which one it was, but 75% went with the group. Okay? We can pick on the teens, but we adults can do the same thing. Okay? The point is, we're supposed to do what's right no matter what the threats, no matter what the challenges. Job loss, okay? Lack of promotion, criticism by family. No matter how many times you're asked to do what's wrong, continue to do what's right. Do what's right. Have the courage to do what's right, no matter who's asking, no matter how many times, no matter what the outcome. God could deliver us, but God may choose. God could heal us from this disease. God may not. Right? So we're called to be faithful no matter what. And so in this, we're finding that God can turn around. Doesn't always do it. Doesn't always do it. Okay? Doesn't keep them from the trial. But the one thing is sure, that in the trial, God is there. And He commends people who are courageously standing on the faith. In fact, we read about these guys later on in the New Testament, that they obtained a good report coming through the fire. Be courageous this week. Father, help us to not just learn this, help us to live it. We pray in Jesus' name. Thanks, folks.